Morning to you, Gareth.
Morning, Adrian. Morning, Owen.
Thanks very much for pulling in and taking the call this morning. So 6 months ago, this is one of the biggest storylines of this fight this weekend. 6 months ago, Canelo was banned. He, in his own words, ate some dodgy Mexican beef. It's something he's, sort of banned himself against now. But he's been 6 months out. Golovkin says he's not buying the dodgy beef line, so he... either way, took the beef. He juiced on clenbuterol, whichever way you want to look at it. That was in his system one way or the other. He had 6 months off, Gareth, and the benefits of that dodgy beef. This fight, perhaps evidence that boxing isn't all that worried about doping?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Adrian. And I don't want to be too rude about Canelo because I've got two Canelos in the studio today. It's double ginger, isn't it? So, look, it's a serious issue. Let me be serious about it then. You can be legally killed in a ring. Clenbuterol is a muscle building steroid. He was tested in outer competition testing in February. Twice he tested positive with a voluntary anti-doping agency led by Dr. Margaret Goodman, and they're trying to clean up boxing because it isn't tiddlywinks, it isn't even rugby, it's punching someone, and with some of the objective, obviously, to hit and not be hit, but also to knock out your opponent if you can. So there was a narrative of controversy between these two because Golovkin should have been awarded the first fight, but it was a draw. When the clenbuterol situation came up, and he was only given a 6-month ban by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and he came up with the excuse that it was tainted meat in Mexico because cattle are injected with certain steroids. It did cast a pall over this event. That's why Abel Sanchez, Golovkin's trainer, can call him Canelo con carne right now. They're making all kinds of jokes about the guy. I sat with Golovkin in Las Vegas about 6 weeks ago, and he was a very angry man. He doesn't show it because he's a gentleman pugilist, but he's a very angry man because Canelo wouldn't do a press tour because he didn't want to be questioned. He seems to ride roughshod over the event itself. Golovkin was hard done by the first time around anyway, and now he's got the job of morally having to win this fight at the age of 36 to kind of put the record straight. Because if Canelo wins, people will still say he's always tainted because of what he did to his body.
Yeah, there's almost it strikes me as you speak there, that Tyson Gay situation from the Olympics a couple of years ago, that everybody's sort of pulling in one direction against that. You mentioned just a little bit about the out of competition testing, Gareth. Just take that on for us if you would. Is like how, because I know Andy was on our podcast yesterday talking about the idea that there isn't that much out of competition testing. How much is there?
There are certain athletes. Look, in the UK. UK anti-doping is the body that works with the Boxing Board of Control, and I think there's something like 60 boxers in the UK. It may not even be as many as that. Yeah, I think it is because of the Olympic and Commonwealth amateur teams, men and women, plus all the championship level fighters. I spoke to Robert Smith, the Boxing Board of Control secretary, about this recently. They are all signed up and are permanently on a testing system of random testing. You're only at that world or kind of like higher title level are you checked in that way. All kinds of things can be going on. In the United States, there isn't a blanket policy. It's down to the commissions, who are ad hoc government departments. So, there's, in a sense, there's quangoism in testing in boxing because there is no world governing body. Yes, WADA oversee all the big amateur events, but there's no look, you brought it up just now. Boxing does have a serious issue because Canelo tested positive for 2 very serious steroids, yeah, but he wasn't banned for 2 years, and he should have been. He was banned for 6 months because the size of the athlete dictates the size, in terms of how famous he is, how much money he can generate. Vegas is saying, no, it's not about the money, it's not about the drugs issue, it's about the money. It's not about the money. It's about the money, Adrian. And that's why he's fighting. If he was a lesser character who wasn't going to bring in $100 million to Las Vegas this weekend, the drop as we call it, he wouldn't be fighting. He'd be banned for 2 years.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be coming back till 2019.
In that context, is the best thing for boxing that Canelo wins this weekend and everybody gets to sort of have that open conversation? Do you know what I mean? Like,
wow.
if Golovkin ends up winning, everybody goes, "Oh, that's great, the bad guy got beaten." Whereas if he wins, we got to discuss it.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's a cheat, and or someone around him is a cheat. They are. Someone has cheated, I think Canelo will win, actually, this weekend, by the way. He's coming into his prime. I think I saw weaknesses in Golovkin. Golovkin might fight a little bit emotionally, even though he's not showing it. Because he is an angry guy. He thinks he's been let down by Canelo, the sport, the commission, and the judges. Yeah, it would be great if Golovkin won, because we could say, there you go, mate. There's divine intervention, There's a divine reason you didn't win. Poetic justice. But it doesn't solve the problem. No. I mean, unfortunately, once you start to open this up, just picture this. Earlier on in the year, I reported on Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz. It's Jer I want to face. Is he in the gym right now?
He is. He's working out.
Is he in the gym?
He's ready for you.
He better be. He better be. Earlier in the year in New York, Deontay Wilder went to cover facing Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz tested positive for banned substances. Next weekend, huge one here in London, Anthony Joshua against Alexander Povetkin. Twice Povetkin's tested positive for drugs. Both those athletes have fought for world heavyweight titles this year. I mean, boxing doesn't have an epidemic of drug taking, but there is definitely a crisis because there's no answer to it, Yeah.
I think Jer is running up and down the steps of the Custom House as we speak at the moment. Just on that point,
you talk about Triple G and you talk about... doing it, Owen.
Sorry, on the point of Triple G, the injustice that he feels he's been suffered, not just with what happened in the last fight, but also with this whole clenbuterol case and Canelo. You say that that's one of his weaknesses. Is that the main weakness, just what's going on in his head, or do you see a real fighting weakness that Canelo can exploit at the weekend?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if Golovkin goes very well to the body, and it's the body of Canelo that he hurt in the first fight. I reckon it was around the 5th or 6th rounds, and for 2 rounds, Canelo got on his bike and circled the ring and stayed away. He was clearly hurt to the body. His ribs were hurt. I mean, his organs would have been hurting. His brain was telling him to move away from this freakishly powerful Kazakhstani. I think this time they'll come in and out quicker and engage more. I went down to the Southern California coast, as one does, to do my research. To see this. That's exactly, difficult gig. Eat your heart out running up on those rainy steps in Dublin, Jer. I've been training on the California coast. No, I went to see Don Chargin, the brilliant old promoter in his 90s who spotted the flame-haired Canelo, the Mexican with flame-coloured hair, and brought him to Oscar de la Hoya. And he said they've sat and analysed the fight, and Canelo is really aware that he could have been more aggressive for another 40 seconds of every round. And I think that's what we're going to see this time. I think he will be very smart about fighting aggressively early and late in the rounds and try and nick more rounds. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Canelo get the controversial points decision, gents.
Just then, in terms of the pay-per-view, like you mentioned, this whole thing casting a cloud over the whole fight, but ultimately it's another talking point. It's another reason why other people are talking about this fight who may not ordinarily be interested in the fight game. Like, to a certain extent, Gareth, I do wonder how much people who really cared about this fight the first time around actually care about the clenbuterol case, and I do wonder if this is just going to draw in extra viewers and this pay-per-view kind of figure is going to go through the roof.
Morally, I completely agree with everything you say, because morally, I think anyone in their right mind knows that Canelo should be banned now and that Golovkin should be facing someone else. Athletically, I got to be honest and say I'm really, really looking forward to this fight second time around. The 13th round between. I mean, this is what's been forgotten, Owen, in the narrative, is that the controversy of the judges' cards that made it a draw, the clenbuterol issue in out of competition testing in February with Canelo. I had so much adrenaline. I'm not off. I've been to many fights. I can remember my heart pounding during the fight and feeling adrenaline while I was writing live for the Telegraph. That, my God, the level of these two guys is just extraordinary. That the actual fight skills on offer. I'm sure Andy Lee touched on this yesterday. He knows both guys. I think he fought Golovkin in the amateurs. Yeah. I think I remember. Yeah, he did. The skill levels were just extraordinary. Their chins, their physiques, the way they kept going, the seesawing of the bout. It was an extraordinary fight. And that's what we've forgotten in all of this. And that's why I'm looking forward to number 2. Because...
Go on, yeah.
Yeah, just because, athletically, this is a brilliant matchup.
Andy had a slight leaning for Canelo, I think, despite his gut instinct. In a word, is that where you're headed?
I am. I mean, I picked Canelo the first time. Golovkin really impressed me. I thought he won by 8 rounds to 4 or 7 rounds to 5. Canelo is a year older. He's in his athletic prime, in his what is he, 26, 27 now. He's in his athletic prime for middleweight. Golovkin's a year older, in his mid-30s. I just think they'll force the pace a little bit this time, and it may tell on Golovkin. And unfortunately, I think the judges will favour Canelo in this fight.
Okay. A word on the undercard just before we leave it, Gareth. Obviously, Spike O'Sullivan up against David Lemieux is one of the fights that are kind of interesting to us. A middleweight bout, 2 big punchers. Is it clear that the winner of this is going to get a shot at the winner of the main event?
I don't think it's clear. It's possible. I mean, it'd be an amazing kind of Cinderella Man story if Spike Lee.
That would be interesting.
That would be, yeah, exactly. It would be interesting. I just watched Black Klansman a couple of days ago. That's all. The Spike Lee's movie.
Spike O'Sullivan's not a Black Klansman, is he?
What's that?
Spike O'Sullivan doesn't make an appearance in Black Klansman, does he?
No, he's not in it, unfortunately. You don't want him in that movie, but no. What a Cinderella Man story it would be if Spike O'Sullivan beats David Lemieux, and Billy Joe Saunders boxed him ragged, and he is mentally a bit shattered. David Lemieux, I think. He knows he's just this punch merchant now. It's a very tough fight for Spike, but Spike's been one of those guys who never gives up. He's relentless. He's try again. And what a story it would be if he came through this, beat Lemieux, and got to fight the winner. It'd be amazing. And you know what? I've loved the animosity between them in the build-up this week. The barbs, the looks, he's a great showman, Spike. Spike has become a great man at selling his own fights as well. I can't wait for the card. It's going to be amazing.
And just one final one before we let you go. A couple of people asking about the Khabib McGregor press conference. I think it's on this weekend. What in the way that we preview fights now, what are we expecting from this?
Well, you're expecting Conor McGregor will be psychologically, emotionally, not physically, over Khabib Nurmagomedov like a rash. He will be telling him he's the B-side. He comes from a third world country. He'll be telling him that his dad is fighting for him. He'll be telling him, while your dad's fighting for you, my dad's sailing around on the waters around Ireland, enjoying the money on the yachts that we bought. He's going to get right inside Khabib's head. And if you see massive emotional responses from Khabib, you can give Conor more chance, as I'm giving him, of winning that fight in the first 7 or 8 minutes.
Right. Khabib will be none too plussed with all of that. What, any recommendation for the Black Klansman? Gareth, haven't heard any reviews of it yet. Should we go and watch it?
Spike Lee's movie. Well, it's a it's amazing story of Denzel Washington's son playing a black cop in the 70s who uncovers the workings of the Ku Klux Klan. It's absolutely fantastic. It's going to be a seminal film. You know, when I was a student rather, Spike Lee was big, wasn't he? You know, She's Got to Have It, all those movies from almost 20 years ago. No, it's genius. It really is a brilliant movie, really worth seeing.
That's my weekend sorted. Gareth, thanks a million for taking the call.
Absolute pleasure, gents.